Okay, this is a little hint. This is a little tease to where I am today. And this is my precious grand dog, Goose. We are in Denver visiting my son, Jamie, and his wife, Taylor. So things are going to be a little bit cattywampus this weekend. We're going to put up kind of an interview that I did with my sister, Meg, I love you too, Goose. My sister who lives in Zionsville, Indiana, all about change, how she navigated change and really feng shuied her life because I just think it's an important topic. So that's what we're going to show you today instead of our regular signature style Saturday. But what we are going to do tomorrow is show you a really fun and fabulous video. If Stuart, you think we can get it all edited in time? Because we had the most fun this morning. Oh my gosh. We went to the Denver Goodwill and it was a thrifter's dream, was it not, Taylor?
Yes, it was.
Oh my God, it was a thrifter's dream, and it was so much fun. We had a friend of Taylor's that went along with us. Did we find great stuff? So we'll be airing that tomorrow. We're going to be doing some more shooting. So we're just trying to fit it all in and give Stuart some time to do some editing. So I hope you enjoyed this interview. A little bit more. Yeah, meet my sister and a little bit more information about my family. And anyhow, I think it's just a fun interview and some great, really great words of wisdom and life skills. So enjoy. Well, I'm so pumped to share with you a new sponsor, Lumen. This is something that's really going to help support all of my health goals. I want to lose a little bit of weight. I want to have more energy, and I really want to see how I am metabolizing my fats, my carbs, etc. over the course of the day. And this is just the ticket. Lumen is basically a handheld metabolic coach that uses an app. It uses a wonderful device that you breathe into over the course of the day, and it helps regulate your fat and your carb intake as part of kind of a healthy lifestyle. Doesn't do the work for you, it is just an assist in giving you really important metrics as you go throughout the day, as you exercise, as you eat, as you consume calories, and it gives you such important feedback. So you might say, Linda, why should I even care about my metabolism? Well, your metabolism is the engine that really fuels you. It is what turns your carbs and your fats and your nutrients and everything into the energy it requires for us to be able to garden, to live a healthy lifestyle. And that kind of information also helps us manage our weight better. It helps us manage our sleep, our energy levels, all sorts of things. It's all about good metabolic health. And that's what Lumen can do for you. It can help you track that very important gauge. Well, thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this video and for really making such a fun way to support my own healthcare goals. Well, this may be one of the most fun interviews I have ever done. It is another installment in our Navigating Life's Challenges and Changes with Style, Grace, and Equanimity. And no one does it better than my next guest. Drum roll, please. My baby sister, Meg. She is here visiting with us from Zionsville, Indiana. And we have, Meg, have we not given you instructions to keep it clean?
Yes, I'm going to try to edit my language and it won't be like one of our regular conversations.
No, but it can be a little bit saucy and a little bit spicy. So I asked you to be on this with me because historically, and I'm constantly, most of the time I'm chastising you and being the big sister and giving you homework assignments. But equally as often, I talk to you about how you are able to feng shui your life in a way like nobody else. It is just unbelievable to me how you have transformed your life. It hasn't been transformed. You have proactively transformed your life professionally, personally, and in so many different ways. So let me just start out. Would you just give us a brief bio of yourself, what you do, your title at work, and just a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Meg Mormon, which is, and I'm Linda's baby sister, and I'm number 9 of the 10 kids. So, and your viewers probably already know this, that you have a different mom than me, but we grew up together. And so, even though you're technically my half sister, we're very close. I mean, I'm actually close to all my sisters. I remember hearing that term half sister when I was in 5th grade, and I was like, I don't get that because we all grew up together. So, we have different genetics, but we have a lot in common, as I do with all my sisters. I am a nurse. First of all, I was a labor and delivery nurse, and then I became a women's health nurse practitioner. And then in 2007, I started a full time teaching job at a state university here in Indiana. And when I was hired, part of the agreement in my contract was that I'd get a doctorate. So I got my PhD in 2013 and I started doing research in nursing education. So my area of research is how do we teach nursing students? How do we teach nurses? How do we learn? And then what's the evidence say about that? So I coordinate a research center for nursing education. So I help support faculty in their nursing education research. And then I do my own research. I coordinate our master's in nursing education program. And then I have my own body of research. So that's my professional role. And so I'm a full time teacher and I'm a clinical associate professor. And yeah, so I think we kind of wanted to focus on my switch from being a clinical nurse to going into academia. And that was a pretty big switch, not only in career, but in my whole lifestyle and the trajectory for the rest of my life.
Okay. So I'm going to interject a little bit just to give kind of a frame of reference. So Meg is number 9 out of 10, and I am number 5 out of 10. And we were calculating this morning, I think I'm 7 years older than you. And in periods in our past, you have lived with me for a little while. We have traveled together. We have done all sorts of fun things. And Stuart, this might be a place where we could put some of the pictures in. Um, we have had some good times. We have really had
Yeah.
some good times. And I would say that in terms of our relationship, sometimes you mother me and sometimes I mother you.
Yes. Mothering is an interesting choice of words. Boss me around, yes.
well, well, yeah, no, I'm
But
just
that goes 2 ways.
yeah, no, it definitely goes 2 ways. So if some of you are wondering, which sister I'm talking about, this is my sister that is in women's health. So I often allude to your expertise in that, as you just mentioned. But also when I say my super stylish sister, not that all my sisters aren't stylish, but I think you and I have the most kind of interest in it.
Oh,
So
I don't know. Kay is
yeah,
like,
Kay's pretty
she's
good
got
at
her finger on the pulse of fashion.
Yeah, definitely on the pulse of fashion. And boy, we have all been in the clutches of thrifting recently.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. That could be its own podcast.
It could be yeah, we may have to do that again.
Ooh,
We may
yeah.
so but when I referred to my sister that was telling me about t-shirts over the oversized blazer, that would have been you. But I digress. So when I talk about how you have feng shuied your life, I'm going to give just kind of a brief span of some of the things that you have done and then ask you pointed questions about those life changes. So in my head, I'm thinking about how you're a graduate of Indiana University, you went to nursing school, you were in clinical practice with an OBGYN for years. Correct me at this point if I mix anything up, Meg, as I'm sure you will. As I'm sure you will. Then you just decided one day that you wanted to go get out of clinical practice and be a part of academia.
Well,
And
It happened a little more organically. So I was working as a nurse in an office. I'd been a labor and delivery nurse, and I worked for an OB in her office too. And I would scrub with her for surgery. So it was fun, and I got to know our patients really well. But she needed me to do a little more. So I went back and I got my women's health nurse practitioner in 2006. And that was when there weren't a lot of nurse practitioners yet. So I was an early adapter. I got that done early. And I was seeing patients. I mean, I worked at a lot of different clinics in Midwest Indiana. Um, and then I had an opportunity to teach a nursing clinical. And I was at a conference and someone said, "You should come teach with us at this school of nursing." And I said, "Absolutely not. I hated nursing school. I really hated it. I remember leaving the school of nursing and thinking I will never come back here again because I didn't like it at all. And so one of my nurse practitioner instructors was there and she said, "If you didn't like it, if you really hated nursing school, you're obligated to go back and make it better." And I
Well,
was like,
that would have
"Oh,
been, yeah, that would have been one of your motivations then.
yeah." And I could not get those words out of my head. So when this opportunity to teach clinical came up, I had a day of the week that I could do that and it worked out. And so I kind of
Let me,
dabbled in it for,
Meg, let me just, would you explain when you say teach clinical? People might
yeah.
not exactly know what that is. So when you say teach clinical, would you define that a little bit?
Yeah, so in nursing school, in most health professions, you have a lecture hall where you learn content, but then you also go and almost do a practicum or an apprenticeship in a hospital setting or a clinic. And so I took students to the hospital, and in this particular case, I took them to a labor and delivery unit, and I helped them, and they worked with a preceptor, and they learned kind of how labor and delivery nurses work in surgery and in C-section suites, and then in labor and delivery and the nursery and the postpartum unit. So I took them to different units, and we worked with nurses on the floor. So I did that and I got really good feedback. And I'd also had nurse practitioner students come in and work with me in the office. So not too long after that, I got a job offer to teach full time at one of the universities. And that's when I really worked with you. I remember sitting down thinking, I can't afford to do this. This would be a $30,000 pay cut. And by the way, a big part of this was that I was single and I was
Mhm.
on my own. I had my own house. It was a small house, my car. I didn't make a lot of money, but I was going to take a pretty big, significant pay cut. And so I remember calling you, and I remember very distinctly sitting on the floor in my living room, leaned up against a chair talking to you and then getting a piece of paper out. And we kind of worked on a budget and we kind of went over, well, what are your monthly expenses? And, could you do this? And what I wasn't considering was that if I went to teach in an academic area, I would have summers off. And at that time in the late, like 2008, 2006, 2007, our parents were still living in their house that was way too big for them. We were really in a transition as a family trying to figure out where are they going to age? Are they going to age in place? Are they going to go to a nursing home? And I was local and I was most likely going to be the one to help them with that because I was single and I was right. They were about an hour from my house.
Okay.
So
Meg,
I knew,
I want to interject a personal note on something because I think people will find this a little bit fascinating. One of the reasons that I feel certain you were so good at clinical in that setting, showing people how to do things, being very patient with them, being very methodical, I think was also kind of a little bit of a reaction to our growing up years because we had great parents, but they were hypercritical. I
yeah,
mean, they were hypercritical about everything we did. And all too often, I think they would catch us in doing things that were wrong instead of catching us doing things that were right and reinforcing us. And I think that was one of the strengths that you brought to your clinical instruction and to just academia in general is was kind of a backlash to that and
yeah,
having a much more reinforcing positive you can do this kind of message versus the one that we grew up with which was very hypercritical. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think also because there were so many of us, they just didn't have a lot of time to spend with us one on one. And so they were trying to kind of keep the ship afloat, and they couldn't get bogged down in details of, oh, you did a good job today, or that was really nice. They were just literally trying to keep things rolling because there were a lot of us and there were a lot of moving parts. So yeah, that might have, I've never thought about it like that, but that definitely could be. I also think because they didn't have, because they didn't give us a lot of one-on-one. And when I was teaching clinical, I would notice I had 11 students in a clinical setting, sometimes in 3 different or 4 different units. So it was a lot of footwork. But when I got to be one-on-one with someone and you said, well, you did this really well, or I like the way you responded to this parent's request, they just lit up. And I saw that positive feedback was such a powerful tool. And it's not that we didn't get it, it's just that we didn't get it was spread out among 10 people, and that was a lot. So I hadn't thought about it like that, but that may have been part of it. And I
I
also
think
think I have an innate ability to see, really, I don't always read the instructions real clearly. And so I try to really think about, what if someone was coming to this and they had no understanding of what was going on? And I think that really helps me. I try to give the big picture, then go down into the details and come back and look at the big picture again. So it was,
Yeah, and I think this is a little bit off topic, but when it alludes to when we were going over the pros and cons and things of that nature at various different junctures in your life, both personal and professional, I think one of the advantages of being one of 10 is that we if because we didn't get much one-on-one from our parents, we really relied on one another. We really relied on our siblings for counsel, for practical life information,
feedback.
for
Yeah.
validation, for feedback. And at we used to laugh because you and I both got married relatively late in life. I got married in my 30s, you got married in your 50s. And because of that, I think we were the only ones that were single in the family for the most part, and we could laugh about we were more likely to be shot by a terrorist than,
Yeah. Yeah.
than find a husband. And I think at different Stuart's laughing over there, but I think at different times in our life we have filled relationship voids. So there have been times where we have mothered one another, parented one another, but also where we have been each other's spouse. Where for I was
Well,
your husband for a long time.
yeah. And to define that, and this really was when this happened, because when mom and dad were going through all those changes, and we knew that there was a big move, and they had not cleared anything out of their house for 30 years. There was a lot, and there had been a lot of kids lived in that house, moved in and out, and left all their stuff. So there was the mom and dad issue. And then I think I was ending a relationship that was like a 10-year relationship, but it wasn't completely over, and we kind of kept bleeding back into each other's lives. So that was a big issue for me. And I remember one time kind of lamenting that, oh, I know that he's not the one, and I don't know that I believe that there's one, but I know we probably wouldn't be able to make it work, but I don't have anybody to know the ins and outs of my daily life. And I remember you saying over the phone to me, I will be your husband. I will be the person that you can check into every day. And you promised me that. And
Yeah.
and at that time, and I think really for the next 3 or 4 years while I was either starting my new job or getting my PhD, we talked at least 3 times a week. And I would tell you, oh, this happened in this project at school, or, this happened, or whatever it was, my furnace broke, or whatever it was that was going on. And just having someone to check in was really important. It didn't have to be a husband, it just needed to be
Yeah.
someone who consistently checked in with me. So that was a really important part. That was, I think one of your questions was, to me, earlier you told me you wanted to know what were some of my supports, and I think that was one of them, was knowing I had somebody to check in with regularly. So when I finally did take that job, it was the best decision because I had flexibility in my hours. So I was taking mom and dad to a lot of doctor's appointments. They both had a couple of surgeries in that 2006 to 2010 period. And I was able to stay with them at the hospital to help them when they got home, to help clean out some of their things. And so then I realized that, and I think I kind of knew this intuitively, but it wasn't really about the pay cut. It was about the flexibility of the hours. And I really wanted that. When I
Interesting.
was working in the office, I was in the office, I would start at 8 or 9 o'clock and I would go till 6 o'clock. And oftentimes I wouldn't get to go to the bathroom. I wouldn't get to go to lunch, certainly wouldn't be able to go pay a bill or stop by the bank or anything like that. I was in the office literally that whole time, and to have some flexibility was really appealing to me. Um, and then I had summers off, and that was also really appealing. And I ended up teaching some summer school, but that was 1 or 2 days a week. So with that switch to academia, the other thing is that I love about teaching is that no day is the same. So I might meet with students one day, I might be at a conference another day, I might be collaborating with someone from a medical school or social work. I could do clinical work. Everything was completely different, and my days were varied. And when I was working as a nurse practitioner, I one of the things that really pushed me over the edge to change was I thought, what am I going to be doing in 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years from now? And it was the same thing in the clinic. There was
Yeah.
no room for growth. There was no room for variety. It was going to be the same thing. And I did not want that. And so that was,
Yeah, I think, let me at this same point in time, I think 2 things, and I may have the chronology of this mixed up a little bit, but another way that you really feng shuied your life, um, which to me is just absolutely amazing, is it was part of your agreement going into academia that you would pursue a PhD at that point. So I guess I should be calling you Dr. Meg.
no, you could
Or
be calling
Dr.
me that.
Meggie, Dr. Meggie. So 2 things I think kind of happened, I don't know exactly simultaneously, but in parallel. And that was you again made another huge change in your life when you started working on a PhD, which, let's face it, is like having a whole nother job, extremely stressful, extremely time consuming. And then you decided that you needed to start a family. And you, and you're smiling, and you adopted Gracie, your beloved rescue dog, who was a part of our family for years.
Let's just take a moment to hold our hearts as we
Yes,
say her
yes,
name,
yes,
Gracie.
yes. To honor her presence. I mean, she would go visit assisted living with you. She knew all of the nurses for mom and dad. She was a fixture in your neighborhood. You never kicked her, but she was there if you needed to yell at someone while you were working on your
That
PhD.
never happened. I never yelled at that dog. That dog, so that was something when I started this program. Let me say two things. One is getting a doctorate was not nearly as hard as my undergraduate degree in nursing school. It wasn't half as hard. And
Really?
I yeah, and I sincerely mean that. I don't think people realize how hard nursing school is. And you have to learn all of the cellular information, and you have to learn all of the pathophysiology. And then you have to learn the practice side of it. You have to learn the people skills. And you have to be able to take a test to get into the profession, the NCLEX. It is so challenging. And then what I don't think people also realize is that depending on where you go, a lot of nurses or a lot of nursing students are working while they're going to school. So, and I worked 3 different jobs to put myself through school, nursing school. So I was working full time as a faculty member. And then I was going to school full time, but the school was online. I had to go out and do a residency a couple times, like 3 different times in the 3 years. But and it was really hard. But I remember someone telling me, get it, and I could have gotten a DNP, a doctorate of nursing practice, or a PhD, and they're both terminal degrees. I ended up doing the PhD because it's more research focused. Um, but what I someone told me this, our former dean, she said, when you get your PhD, it changes the way you think. You will think about problems differently. And again, going back to the one of 10 kids, I think we all have a fairly high level of emotional intelligence because you have to read the room when you're in the room and there's 10 kids and 2 adults. You are constantly reading people's moods, you're constantly reading body language, and you kind of do this in this subconscious way. So I had a high level of emotional intelligence. I don't think I was thinking critically. And I don't think I did learn to do that in my PhD program, to be a skeptic, to learn what does the literature say about this? What does the science say about it? And I really value that. It really did get me to think differently about things. So it was a great opportunity. And then it allows me, affords me the luxury of doing studies and science. So that was great. But I knew I was going to be home a lot because was doing this online program, and so that allowed me to get a dog. So I rescued this little dog, and I just happened to have her portrait right here. This is Gracie, and
That is Gracie. R.I.P. Gracie.
she was the sweetest dog ever, and she was the most gentle soul. And so I was home with her a lot. I could walk her every day. She got me outside. That really helped me while I was getting my PhD. We walked almost every single day. I did get to know my neighbors. I'd been in that house for, I don't know, 15 years when I got her, and I met more neighbors after I got my dog than I'd ever met in those 15 years. And then I would take her with me when mom and dad finally decided to go into an apartment and then assisted living and then the nursing home. And they loved her there. And she would go in, she would go with me. I would take her to dad's physical therapy. She loved to go through the dining room because she could eat off the floor because there were a lot of people dropping their food. And I would take mom out to eat, or I would take dad out to eat. And the nurses would say, well, just leave her here and we'll go check on her. And they wouldn't even say hi to me. They'd say, where's Gracie?
Yeah,
So she was.
she was definitely part of the family. Let's also give a little historical context. We share the same father. We have different mothers, but both of our mothers were nurses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and our father has worked for Eli Lilly Pharmaceutical Company for forever. Meg's twin brother Martin works for Eli Lilly. We have a sister who's an ophthalmologist. So there's a lot of medical professionalism
Well,
running
dad
through
was a pharmacist.
the family. Yeah,
We have a sister who's an ophthalmologist. We have a niece and a nephew who are an ophthalmologist. We have another niece who's a family practice doctor, a brother-in-law who's a family practice doctor. So there's a lot of us in the medical field, but that didn't have anything to do with my decision to go into nursing. It was a nurse that I worked with in a clinic one time, just filing, and I saw how she was in a labor and delivery situation. But that dog was great. So yeah, I had the dog. Gracie was this wonderful dog that really got me through a lot, and then she also helped me get through. I mean, I one of the things I really wanted to do was I wanted to finish that PhD because Dad always said he wanted a Dr. Mormon, and although Barb is a doctor, her last name is different, and so it was really important for him. And he and Mom were not really sure what a PhD meant, but he knew I would have this title of Dr. Mormon, and that was very important to him. So he would always say, when I would go visit him, he'd say to one of the aides, she's going to be a doctor. So I finished July 13th of 2013, and he was so proud of me. And then he died September 6th. So I just barely got in under the wire, but that was what I wanted. I just wanted to make it through so he could have that, I could kind of, let
yeah,
him know that
and,
they were both
and
very proud of me, and it was fun. I
very
mean,
sweet.
I'm really glad I did it. It was a crazy time, but it was good. So once I got done with that, it was like, okay, now I can start doing, and the other thing that is fun about my job is that I always, as a kid, I loved art. I wasn't great at it, but I loved it. And our oldest sister, Beth, is an artist, and she's really good. And I always thought, oh, I'd love to be an artist, but that was not a way. I mean, we were not encouraged to do anything like that. They wanted us to get a job. And even
You
though
get a
we were paying our
job,
own
you move
way,
on.
they
And
want,
let me interject here that first of all, yesterday we had a wonderful Meg set up a Zoom call with the siblings because our dad would have turned 100 years old yesterday.
yeah.
And yeah, and he was a quite charismatic character. He would have turned 100 years old. But I think that I don't know. It's just it's just interesting that we talk about we wanted to get a job that would make us a living. In other words, that's I think that was all of our focus. We went to college, we needed to get a job. So the other thing was that we all put ourselves through school. We all all 10 of us worked our way through college. And so we also looked at all of those things very practically. And I think now, oh, well, would I have gotten a different major? Would I have maybe gone into landscape architecture or something like that? But the lens through which we looked at everything was a very pragmatic, what can get me a job
Yeah.
as soon as I graduate? So degrees in business, degrees in nursing, degrees in education, those kinds of things was a very much a driving force for us and all of our siblings. But continue with that thread.
Well, so the research that I do is to use art to teach observational skills, and it's something called visual thinking strategies. And I just serendipitously found out about this. One of my former patients had told me about it, and I heard about it at a conference, or it was a speaking event that Daniel Pink did. He wrote that book, A Whole New Mind, and he talked about right and left brain thinking. And at this lecture, he talked about at Harvard, they had a class with medical students and they used art to teach observational skills. And just on a whim, I sent him an email. And within 10 minutes, he responded back to me and said, here's the study that I referred to. And I looked it up. It was visual thinking strategies. One of my patients was a docent at the art museum. She said, oh, we do that at the Indianapolis Museum of Art. I took some students, they loved it. And that's what I ended up doing my dissertation on. And that's what all of my research has been about. So using art to teach observational skills and communication skills. So the fact that my primary love was labor and delivery and working with mothers and babies. That was everything to me. But then I took this other love of art and the fact that I could marry those two things. It just blew everything open for me. So it's been really fun. I've been really fortunate that one of the things my nursing students will say is, well, I don't know exactly what I want to do when I graduate. But I don't think you have to have like, okay, here's the end point. I think you just have opportunities pop up and you kind of explore them and then they might open a door to something else. So it's been really a great career. And now I'm kind of looking at maybe taking a little bit different direction with it. But I do love, you can see I have art here. I have, these are some sketches over here that my now husband did for me when we were dating, and we both love art. But do you want me to talk about how I feng shuied
Well,
my?
I just want to, there is kind of a continuum through here that I think sometimes we think about change as being just a door opens and it shuts, a door opens and it shuts. And it's really more organic than that. One thing leads to another. And you can keep pulling on that thread that leads to an ultimate destination because you just along the way, you kept saying yes to opportunities, even though it was outside of your comfort zone. You asked for help along the way. You reach out to Daniel Pink, who is just big time.
Yeah.
It was a huge thing. You risked rejection along the way. You identified various needs that you had as you progressed along your professional and personal path. I may be lonely. I may need to get a dog. I need these kinds of things. You bought a house. You traveled a ton by yourself. You embraced the single life. You resigned yourself, as we both did at a certain point. I'm never going to find a husband. I'm never going to find a husband or whatever, partly because you were always so busy. But you also had the strength of mind to shut down a relationship that wasn't working so that you could be open to other relationships. And so just in the past, I'm going to kind of speed this up a little bit, but I think just about the past, how long have you been married now? 3 years? 2
3
years?
years. Yeah.
3 years. Okay. And by the way, Meg, one of the biggest regrets of my life is that I couldn't attend her wedding because that's when I had to have major gastrointestinal surgery and I was in the hospital while she was getting married. But just in the past 3 years, you have gotten married, you have moved, because during COVID, you ended up moving in with your now husband. Um, so you started just a really deep relationship. You continued to make some transitions in your career life. But the other thing, on a more kind of superficial, well, not necessarily superficial, but you finally had time, I think, to devote to yourself. Both of our parents are gone now. That was a huge time suck. And now you've concentrated on your own personal fulfillment, I guess. And talk a little bit about two other things. First of all, getting married. Secondly, you have recently and very beautifully, I might add, decided to go completely gray. She has a different mother, so she's got the beautiful, beautiful gray hair. And you also have been able to concentrate on your health. And just recently, you've lost what, 50, maybe 60 pounds now, just in the past
50.
50 pounds in the past how long? Like,
About not quite a year. It's been about 10 months.
so talk a little bit about how you just keep amazingly putting your foot forward and making these life changes based on, I think, very, very relevant and acute self knowledge and self awareness.
Well, I think it's more serendipity. I mean, again, when you were saying that about a door opening and another door closing, sometimes I think you just have to open a door and like kind of look around and say, do I really want to go through this? Or I'll step through it, but I'll go back through it and do something else. And that's pretty much what happened. I had, after that big breakup, I thought, I'm going to try. I did some online dating and I had just, it was horrible. I was just like, okay, I'm pretty happy with my life. I have a group of core friends that lived in my neighborhood, and we were kind of each other's support, and we did a lot together. We let our dogs out. We took our dogs for walks. We did dinner parties, and it was really fun. And I thought, I think I'm okay. I'm good to go. If I met somebody, it would be great. But so, and I had my house paid off. I was saving. I was, started to travel again, and then I actually was at a research conference in Australia with a friend of mine. And this friend of mine, Desiree, this is just a really kind of a fun little story. Desiree, when I worked at the hospital, I worked in labor and delivery. I was a brand new nurse. She was a NICU nurse, worked in intensive care. And she would come back when we would have a bad baby, and she scared me to death. She intimidated me. Well, then when I was working in a clinic, she was one of our patients, and I was like, oh no, I have to take care of this NICU nurse. And she was so sweet, and I took care with both of her boys, and we got to be friends. Then when I started teaching at this university, she was also teaching there, and she's ended up mentoring me. So we went to Australia to present some research, and I drug her to the art museum because that's what I do when I travel. I love to go to art museums. And I was, and she was bored and she was sitting in the corner. So when we were getting ready to leave, she said, oh, I can't wait. Let's get out of here. And we walked out and she said, you need to meet my brother. And I was like, I'm done dating. And she said, no, I want you to meet my brother. And she has a brother that was a minister. And I thought, I don't think I want to go out with a minister. And she said, no, not that brother. I have another brother who's recently divorced. So I didn't give her permission to give him my number, but she did. And he called me and we started dating. And we both love art. We both love gardening. We both love travel. We love animals and birds and babies and family and
He's an
tradition.
architect. Share what he does.
He's an architect. And he's my best friend. He's officially my husband now. And you're not. You've stepped down.
We've
Stepped
gotten a
down a lot.
divorce, Meg. We've
Yes.
gotten a divorce.
Yes. And so the other kind of a couple other things that happened along the way were so we ended up we spent a lot of time during COVID. We ended up getting married. But we got married and then we had a celebration a year later in our yard. So during that year, we kind of created this French country garden that we planted, and I planted a lot of seeds. He did a lot of the really heavy lifting. We kind of designed it and it was really fun. But I also was going through menopause during all of this. So I'd moved in, we'd gotten married, and then I just couldn't figure out my back and my hips and my joints were awful. And, mom and dad both had arthritis and had their knees replaced. I could barely get up the stairs. My joints were so sore. I didn't realize this. And for your listeners who are perimenopausal or menopausal, it's not just hot flashes with menopause. 80% of women have severe body and joint pain. And I had experienced that and I thought it was my back. I thought, well, I'm not as mobile because of COVID and I wasn't getting out and exercising. And I must have done something to my back. So I did finally start hormones and then I had to have foot surgery right after we got married and I was off my foot for 2 months. Then last year I had a torn meniscus. So over about a 3-year period, I gained 40 pounds. And it was devastating, not just because I looked so bad, but I couldn't hardly move. And with the surgery and then the torn meniscus, and then last year after I tore my meniscus, I started physical therapy and they put me in this water tank and had me do a treadmill underwater. And it was like, this feels so good. I don't have any pain when I do this. So I started water walking. I met with a dietitian and I started counting calories and protein. And then I switched to Aquafit, and there's a lot of great people on Instagram to follow for Aquafit, which is just a water-based exercise program. And that's what I've been doing, and I've been able to lose the weight. So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach. But yeah, so it's been really great. And what also happened was when I had my foot surgery, I'd been coloring my hair since I was in my 30s. I mean, and so I had a big skunk stripe. I mean, my hair was brown and I had this white stripe. And the girl that does my hair, I went in to have it colored and she said, "Oh, you need to let it go." And I was like, "Let it go?" And she said, "Yeah, people pay for that color. You should just let it go and you've gotten through the worst part." So it was just ironic that I was so afraid people would see. I mean, this is my real color. There's no highlights in it or anything. And I'd been covering it up for years. And I'm not an overly attractive person at all. But since I've let my hair go, it's been fascinating. I
Mm,
get more compliments about my hair. And it was the thing that I was covering up for years. And that
yeah.
I get so many compliments on my hair. And so it's like, I don't know, but I did get married and I had my husband is just the best and everybody loves him. I think I always say my siblings love him more than they love me. Last night on that group Zoom, everyone's like, "Well, where's Brett? Where's
Yeah,
Brett?"
yeah, we don't care about you, Meg. Where's
Right?
yeah, yeah. And he was brave to become part of our very our very huge huge family. I mean that took a great deal of
He
gumption.
loves our family. He loves our family. And I mean, and I love his family too. He's just there's so many of us but he's just fascinated by all of it.
Yeah, we've got yeah, we've got a lot of baggage when you marry into our family. There's you're marrying into a lot of baggage.
Oh, and he says this all the time too, because so I got married when I was 57 years old, first and only marriage. And one of the things I had said something to him while we were dating, I said, "Well, do you like my hair like this, or should I cut it differently?" And he goes, "You don't get it, do you?" And I said, "What?" And he goes, "You don't need to change anything. I love you just the way you are." And I was like, "What?" What is this? What? I don't
Yeah,
have to be thinner. I don't have to be smarter. I don't have to be
yeah.
a better housekeeper. It was like the strangest concept. And he loves my hair, but he doesn't care about what I wear. He really doesn't care. And he's just a really good guy. He's the
Meg, your
best.
life is kind of a Nancy Myers movie. It's kind of a Nancy Myers movie. So I want to let's do something kind of fun for a minute. Uh,
Okay.
so again, as a point of reference, Meg is extremely tall. When we're together, it's like Mutt and Jeff. So I am 5'5". A lot of you have been asking me that recently. I'm 5'5". How tall are you?
I'm 5'11".
Yeah, she's 5'11". So she's very, very tall. But we
And I'm
love
also not super skinny like skinny Lenny here. I got baby got back. So
we all my dad gave us all nicknames growing
yeah.
up. And what were you?
I was Macaroni Megan. He called me
Macaroni Meg.
Megan a
Yes.
lot. So I was
And
Macaroni Megan.
yes, and I was what?
Skinny Lenny.
Skinny Lenny. I was Skinny Lenny, and I'm still that to my siblings, Skinny Lenny. But we love to share fashion tips. We love to share fashion ideas. Meg is probably much more, I don't know, you seem to be much more knowledgeable about trends and things than I am. And I think it's because of a couple of things. One, your artistic sensibilities. But the other thing is, and we talked about this recently on one of my videos, the importance of making new friends at any age, of any age. And you have such a cross spectrum of friendships, and I would include in those friendships our nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
So we have your twin brother, Martin, has three girls with whom you are extremely close. You go shopping a lot, you share fashion ideas, you go thrifting together. They're very stylish themselves. And but yet you also are good friends with your next door neighbors, whom you call the girls, who are in their 90s.
One is 90 and one is 84.
Is 84. And so you are the poster child. You're extremely social, much more social than I. And you have friends of all ages, but I think that also contributes to the fact of that you seem to be more in the know on trends and things. So given that, what would you call two signature style touches of your personal style that are enduring, that you've that are kind of evergreen? You've done it for years. You still navigate to them. So what would you say are two signature style touches of yours?
Oh, I know you gave me this question ahead of time. I don't know that I'm going to adequately answer it, but
I give
I
you
do
homework and you don't do it.
I do have a career.
Yeah.
I do have this thing called a
Unlike
job.
moi, unlike moi.
No, I didn't say that. I
So
just said I do.
this is okay.
This is a
So
particularly
let's
stressful month for me. So,
okay, let's touch on a little sore point here. So I come from a very accomplished family of doctors and PhDs and all of this. And so I'm a little bit sensitive that what I of what a little bit. I mean, I'm proud of what I do,
okay,
but
let's not.
you
Now that
guys
is not
you
what I
guys have
meant.
real jobs.
No,
And
and see,
and then I do what I do. So it
no,
sometimes
that's
I
not at all what I said. I'm saying for myself, I have a full-time job. I was not referring to you at all. I know. First of
see,
all,
there's
let's just
my insecurities.
let's just say you have an MBA, you're one of the smartest people I know, you're very accomplished, and you do this. I mean, this has nothing to do with you. I'm just saying I also am trying to do all this other stuff and I'm in overload for teaching and I'm just stressed. So I didn't answer all my questions. I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, at our house, you not only got in trouble from mom and dad, you might also get in trouble for an older sibling.
Of course, if I could reach my hand over and point directly to you. No,
Okay, so Meg,
what?
what would you be? I could name several. What would
Well, no, I think, okay, so I have to say one of the things that I absolutely love is jewelry. And I mean, so I almost every day I put on a piece of mom's old jewelry. So one of the things that's interesting is that my mom, your stepmom, used to be a nun and she never took her final vows. And so before she left the convent, well, when she left the convent, she worked for a couple years before she met our dad. And in that time, she lived with her parents and she was making a little bit of cash and she enjoyed spending that cash. And she was very stylish and she bought a lot of costume jewelry. And Barb and I, my other sister, who's 3 years older than me, when we were younger, we would go like on a Friday night, mom would open up her jewelry boxes and let us go through and look at them. And we would divide it out like, like, okay, if we were going to split everything up and Barb would get the practical pearls and the plain, and I would be,
Barb
I'll
is our
take those.
sister that's the ophthalmologist, by the way.
Yes. I'll take the diamonds and I'll take all the shiny, pretty things. So I love jewelry, and I've made jewelry
And you
before, and
layer it. You love layering it. You love composing it. You
but I
love
also love the sentimentality of it. So for instance, and I did this before I really thought about this podcast today. So this bracelet that I have on, I've had it's probably from the 50s, and it was one of mom's bracelets. And I have her I wear her wedding band almost every day, and another ring of hers. These are earrings that I gave her in like 1995 or 96 when I went to England. I bought these for her. Um, this is a necklace that I bought when I went to St. Martin with my sister-in-law, and we bought it in port, you know. I mean, so my jewelry is always I I pick it. I almost always wear something of mom's, but a lot of it has sentimental value. You know, I have jewelry that you've given me, or that Kay or Barb or Linda or Terry. I mean, I have my nieces and nephews have given me jewelry that I still have. I have a lot. I don't have a lot of high end jewelry, but it's highly sentimental to me. So jewelry, I love turquoise jewelry and Indian jewelry, Native American
you
jewelry. I
love
have a
emeralds.
friend who
You
sells
love
it.
emeralds.
I love emeralds, and I have an emerald wedding band, and then my engagement ring has an emerald on each side. That's my birthstone. So yeah, so jewelry is one thing I have always loved jewelry, and then especially lately. So I've been getting rid of a lot of my loose clothes because for so long the clothes I wore were just I didn't get to pick what I liked. It was just what do they have in my size. So just in the last 2 months, I've really gotten into thrifting, and that's one of my goals is to thrift my clothes, get secondhand clothes only. I mean, I will let myself get a couple. I thought if I do 80% of my clothes thrifted and then the other 20% can be new because I have really long legs and it's hard to find pants that fit me well. So I've been going to Goodwill and I've been going to some secondhand shops, and now I've gotten on eBay, and Kay and I were talking about this. I think one of the styles that I'm really into right now is kind of recapturing that Ralph Lauren polo look from the 90s. So a lot of silk and linen, a lot of leather trim, a lot of that little bit of a nod to equestrian look. I love that. So and denim, a lot of denim. I've done some of the men's jackets, but they don't. I do love them. Like concert T-shirts, which I've always gone to a lot of concerts, so I had a lot of concert T-shirts. I got rid of 80% of my belongings when I moved in with my husband, and now I'm starting to unfortunately reaccumulate some stuff. So I'm trying to
You
take,
need new
one in,
size,
one out.
need new sizes,
Yeah, yeah. So
you
as
need
I do that, I'm kind of thrifting those new
yeah.
sizes.
But I would say you have always had a point of view, and on numerous occasions I would say, "Okay, Meg, I've got this function and what should I wear?" And you'd be kind of familiar enough with my wardrobe. I can't believe you'd even remember what was in my wardrobe, and you'd help me put put an outfit together. And another distinction between you and myself is that you remember everything from our childhood, from our whatever, and I remember absolutely nothing.
Well, let
I
me share with your viewers a little insight into to your past. So, of course, no, of course I love fashion because so you're 6 or 7 years older than me, and Kay is what, 8 or 9 years older than me. So we had Barb and I shared a bedroom, and Kay and Linda shared a bedroom, and we had a bathroom, a bedroom, and we had a Jack and Jill bathroom between us. So you can imagine being 7 or 8 years old and watching your 16 to 20-year-old sisters getting ready and going out on a date, and they're in there putting their makeup on and just sitting there watching them put their makeup on, or in their room, which was the coolest 1970s room. It had pink shag carpet. It had on the ceiling, it had wallpaper. It was a little tiny flower that had pink and green petals that expanded out. They had a
yeah,
green couch. They had twin beds that pushed together, and like pink and green everything. Remember the
it was very groovy.
there was the 70s, the 7 Up bottle that was like had the long neck and then the big paper flowers. So I would go in there and watch them get ready for their dates. And then occasionally, not very often, but occasionally, Martin and I were like 5 or 6 or 7. We would be able to sleep in between Kay and Linda on the crack in between the two twin beds. There was never a safer spot in the world than between those two. It was like, oh, the best night's sleep in the world. So I remember then when we moved to Indiana and you were here for a year and then you moved back to Oklahoma. You and Kay would send Barb and I boxes of your hand-me-down clothes. And I mean, their gold would never compare to what those boxes held. I mean, we were so enthralled. So, of course, and then I lived with you that summer when I was in college, and you were Miss MBA work professional, and you had remember you had all your shirts professionally ironed. And I'm like working at the mall, drinking beer on the weekends. And you're
Well,
like,
I do have to correct you a little bit when you would say, "Oh," and you'd be in there getting ready for your dates and everything. That would have been Kay. I practically didn't date at all during high school, or I guess in junior high, you're probably too
not
young.
how I remember it.
Well, yeah, no, I did not
Stuart,
date.
call me. I'll tell you the real scoop.
Kay really, really dated. Well, I'm going to have to close this out pretty much, but
Uh-huh. How
yeah.
convenient.
Very timely. It's
Yeah.
very timely.
Just for your viewers, if you'd like to have another podcast to talk about Linda's past, put your comments below. I know how this works. I watch
Yeah, the behind the scenes story. We could do some serious, serious trash talk, couldn't we?
Mhm.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, we could do some serious trash talk. And we would have version A and version B, my version being version A, the true one, and then
Oh.
version B being the version of all of my siblings. So, if you are going to leave everybody with your best piece of advice about feng shuiing your life, about navigating change at any age, um, what would you say, or how do you feel about change at this point in your life? Just give us a succinct little sign off.
Well, I would say, I mean, you kind of challenged me every year to think of a word for the year. So my word for this year is curiosity, which I think is part of that. I think just be curious to what are the opportunities around you. They're everywhere. And I just think exploring friendships, you meet somebody in the grocery store and you start talking about something, make a plan to go meet someone for a cup of coffee, or you meet a friend of a friend, or you see, I mean, I met somebody in the thrift store the other day and we were talking about different things. But I think there's these little opportunities all along. It doesn't have to be some big plan. Just be curious and open to what pops up during your day, whether it's a new recipe, whether it's a style, whether it's a painting class you can take online, or a different plant to put in your garden, or moving a plant. I just think that it doesn't have to be a grand, and then it'll lead to other things. So I think curiosity, being curious, asking people questions about themselves, and really trying to listen to how they do things, you can learn so much.
And just being receptive to what presents itself. And that's
Exactly.
true whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, just exploiting what opportunities present themselves. So this was so much fun. This was just so much fun. If you guys enjoyed it too, make sure to put it in the comments below. If you have questions for Meg or myself, make sure to put it in the comments below. Meg is just, well, she is just wonderful. She's one of my very best friends. My very,
Oh.
very best friends.
Now, how
And
much do I get paid for this podcast?
Zippo.
Cut.
Yeah, Zippo. Maybe I'll send you a hand me down. maybe I
Thanks,
won't
Linda.
maybe I won't give you so much homework next week. But I love you, Maggie.
Love you
I
too,
love your
sweetie
husband
Minnie.
too. And we will talk again soon.
Bye.
Bye.